What if the biggest financial opportunity of your life wasn't some six-figure salary or a big fancy $1 million business idea, but just a single rental property? Yeah, that's right, just one. And what if I told you that that single rental property could set off an explosion of wealth building opportunities that would completely change the financial trajectory of your life? In this video, I'm going to show you 3 powerful ways that owning a rental can transform your financial future. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly why your first rental could be the most important investment you ever make. Hey, really fast, before we get into it, we're gonna be talking about how one rental changes everything. But the thing that stops most people from ever getting into that rental is the fear of failure. And I'm really excited to announce that I'm doing a huge workshop on Wednesday to show you the ropes on picking the best properties, figuring out how to cash flow, how to optimize your revenue, all that good stuff. It's actually crazy to say this because it's been over a year since I've hosted a workshop. It's my one big workshop every single year. It's free, but because it's free, it always maxes out. So if you wanna be there, click the link down below, snag a spot, and I'll see you at the workshop. Okay, now back to the video. Let's talk about building wealth. Let's start with one of the most powerful forces in all of real estate, appreciation. If you don't know what appreciation is, in basic terms, it's how much your property goes up in value over time. And over the last 30 years, real estate has appreciated at an average of 4.4%. But what does that actually mean? Let's break down the numbers. If you were to buy a $300,000 house today and it appreciated 4.4% annually, in 30 years, that property would be worth $1,091,783. Now, the real kicker here is that by the time that property would have reached that value, the loan would be paid off. Completely paid off, as in no debt associated with that house. And not only do you own $1 million asset free and clear, but you also didn't have to pay it down yourself. Your long-term tenants did that for you, or in my case, your Airbnb guests. And that's what I call double-pronged wealth building. You get appreciation on one side and the debt pay down on the other, which is mostly what we covered in the last video in the series when we talked about growing your wealth down. Now, imagine you don't just have one property, but what if you owned 5? Wait, 5? How do I do that? Yeah. Don't worry about how to get there yet. We will talk about that later in the video, I promise. But let's just say that you have 5 properties and they're all worth $300,000 a piece. And let's just say that those 5 $300,000 houses appreciate at that same average annualized rate of 4.4%. At the end of 30 years, those 5 houses would be worth $4.6 million. Paid off, free and clear, straight equity to you. To drive this home a little further, you could sell those 5 houses and you'd have $4.6 million in your bank account. Of course, you'd have to pay some taxes if you decided to keep all of that in cash, but you're a millionaire, I think you can afford it. And also, spoiler alert, you always have to pay taxes when you make money. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. You'd have $4.6 million to your name with just these 5 rentals, and we aren't even considering the cash flow that you would get from these properties over the course of 30 years. Which brings us to the second powerful way that you build wealth through real estate. Now let's talk about the part that actually changes your day-to-day, and that is the cash flow, meaning your profit, the amount of money that you have left over after all of your expenses associated with the rental property. Now let's say that you have a single long-term rental property that generates $300 to $500 a month after all of your expenses. Now I know that doesn't necessarily sound like much, but for the average American, it's a game changer. Because according to this survey by Career Builder, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So with that in mind, $300 to $500 a month goes a long way for most people. Now let's take it up a notch from long-term rentals where you're making $300 to $500 a month. Now let's imagine that that property is an Airbnb. When we're talking Airbnb, that $300 to $500 on the long-term side can very easily shoot up to $1,000 to $2,000 a month. And that right there is enough to completely change your life. Suddenly you're not just making ends meet, you are actually splurging occasionally. And instead of saving all year to go on vacation, now maybe you're just saving a few months. Or maybe you're just aggressively paying down your credit card debt and your student loans. You have way more options available to you when you're making $1,000 to $2,000 a month versus $300 to $500 a month. I gotta be honest, as someone that lived this, it was awesome. So does that cash flow actually build wealth? Well, one of the things that I always live by is that cash flow makes you rich, equity makes you wealthy. We talked about building equity through appreciation in that first point, so we're checking the wealth box there, but then we got this cash flow. What do we do with this cash flow? Well, if you're paying down debt, I think that's building wealth. You could also take that cash flow and invest it in more real estate, which again, builds more wealth. Or you can use that cash to live life, enjoy life more, do the things you love, buy the things that you never would buy with your hard-earned salary money. Those little things in life go a long way, and cash flow unlocks them. When you think about it that way, living life on your own terms, I personally consider that wealth too, because it's an investment in my happiness. But here's the truth. Real estate changes how you see the entire world. See, the thing is, you start seeing debt as a tool, not as a burden. And then you start seeing opportunities everywhere. It's really cool because previous to you buying a rental property, real estate seems like this very insurmountable task, like it's this impossible thing to do. But once you do it once, it becomes exponentially easier to do it a second time. Then you become obsessive and you want to do it again and again and again, and you stop thinking, can I afford this? And you make one small tweak to your mindset, and all of a sudden it becomes, how can I afford this? And that's the power of real estate. It's not just wealth building, but it's also mindset shifting. Buying your first rental rewires your entire mindset, and the way that it explodes your wealth is that it changes how you see the entire world. Let me explain. Before I bought my first rental property, I was living the typical corporate America blueprint. Work your 9 to 5, save a little bit from your paycheck, or at least try to put 3% into a retirement account, and maybe, just maybe by the time you retire, you'll be a millionaire. And then as you undergo these mindset shifts, you realize that it doesn't really matter how much money you have, you can still buy more real estate. What? I'll get there. There's gonna be this point where you run out of money. And you'll realize that when you find a crazy good deal, the money will come. There will always be a way to fund a crazy good real estate deal. When I first got started, I was able to kind of cobble together a few Airbnb units, and I ran out of money. And I started talking about my Airbnb units and my business online. This is before Rawbuilt, before this YouTube channel existed, before I had a following. I was just sharing my progress and my journey with my friends and family on all the different social platforms. And one day, I had a friend reach out and say, hey, I see that you're doing this Airbnb thing. I've been wanting to get into it. Can you help me? And I said, sure. How about we partner? If you buy it and you fund it, I'll run it and I'll teach you how to do this. And they said, heck no. What are you talking about? That's crazy. Just kidding. They said, great, that sounds awesome. So we bought a house together in the Smoky Mountains. And not too long after that, I was taking improv classes at UCB in Los Angeles, California, and we were going around introducing ourselves. And I was like, hey, I'm Rob, I'm a copywriter at an ad agency, and I do Airbnb. And everyone kind of looked at me in this kind of like, what are you eating here? Type of look, because everyone there was an actor or a model or something in the arts. And later on, we did an improv show. We tanked. And then we went to a bar afterwards to celebrate. And one of the people in my class came up to me and said, hey, that Airbnb thing you talked about sounds really, really interesting. I've got money. I don't know how to do what you do, but I'll fund whatever if you just teach me how to do it. And I was like, great. So we went on to build Casa Mariposa in Joshua Tree, California. That was a house that I didn't put a single dime into. My partner funded it. We built it over the course of a year and then sold it for a $400,000 profit. And that's what really locked in this, how can I afford this mindset? I could afford it by partnering up with someone else who considered real estate an insurmountable task that they can't do on their own. I give up some equity, but I get a free house out of it. And I've done that several more times over the course of my career. See, the thing that you'll learn very quickly is that real estate is a formula. And once you figure that out, you realize that you can replicate a formula over and over and over again. Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to go raise money or partner up with random people. That sounds way too complicated for me, Rob. That's okay. That's my story. It may not resonate with how you want to do things, but the point that I'm making here is real estate is a formula that you can replicate. Remember earlier when I talked about if you got to 5 houses, that would end up being $4.6 million in equity by the end of the 30 years. And then I said, hey, more on that later. Well, that later is now. This is my favorite strategy. Really, I should do a whole video on this. But for now, we're going to break it down here. And this strategy is called the sneaky rental strategy. This strategy is where you buy a primary residence and you put 3.5% down using an FHA loan and you live in it for a couple of years. Very easy. See, because it's a government subsidized loan, you don't have to actually put down 20%. You only need 3.5%. Now, let's work through the numbers on this. Now, 3.5% of a $300,000 house is $10,500. That to me is a very achievable amount of money to save up in 2 years to execute this strategy. And you live in that house for a couple of years. Easy. Then, after a couple of years, you turn that property into a rental because you're gonna go and buy another property to go and live in. And you repeat this process every 2 years. Let's carry the math down a little bit further. If you keep buying a house every 2 years and moving into a new house, over the course of 11 years, you will have accumulated 5 properties. And let's just say that you stop there and never buy a house again. 30 years after you make that final purchase, those 5 houses will be worth $4.6 million. Well, technically they'd be worth more because you bought some of those properties earlier, but I'm trying to keep this simple here. The really interesting thing here is that when you own them free and clear, you no longer have a mortgage associated with these properties, meaning the majority of your rent checks become profit because you no longer have a mortgage to pay. And that's just if you bought 5 properties and held on to them for 30 years. Now imagine instead of stopping at year 11, you stop at year 22 and you have 10 houses instead of 5. And now your portfolio is worth $9.2 million. Not bad, right? You become faster, you become nimble, you figure out how to scale faster and how to replicate the formula over and over and over again. And that, my friends, is exactly why wealth explodes after one rental. First, there's the compounding effect of appreciation and debt pay down, turning a $300,000 house into $1 million asset. Secondly, a rental can double or triple your discretionary income and let you live the life that you want to live. And lastly, it rewires your mindset and unlocks your ability to do it over and over and over again. And by the way, this isn't just some theory that I figured out. It's real, it's proven, and it's achievable. You don't need to be a millionaire to start. You just need to buy that first rental. And trust me, once you do, you'll wonder why you didn't start sooner. Hey, really fast, if you like this video and my overall approach to building wealth, then don't forget I'm gonna be hosting my big workshop this Wednesday. We're gonna talk about what it takes to get that first rental, how to stand out, and how to cash flow more than your competition so you can be on your way to wealth. You can click that link down below. Remember, it's been a year since I've done this. We maxed it out because it is a free workshop. So if you wanna be there, register down below. And if you wanna watch the other videos in this series that are all about wealth building, then you're gonna wanna click right here. All right, don't forget to also like and subscribe and all that good stuff, but I'll catch you on the next episode of Rob Hill, which is over here. Click it. All right, bye.